and everybody for your patience. Yeah, thank you for joining Global Peace Studies. And today we are discussing the impact of waste management on health, human health in Africa. And the speaker is Dr. Ali Adan, who is an environmental expert, senior scientist, and lecturer in the Department of Physics, Earth, and Environmental Sciences at the Technical University of Kenya in Nairobi. Dr. Ali, you are welcome to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George, and the rest of the scholars who are in attendance of this international webinar. Let me take this particular opportunity to really thank in a very special way the convener for the webinar series for giving me a chance in today's presentation. I have volunteered to discuss the impact of waste management on health in Africa because waste management is a public health issue that is very critical when it comes to sustainable development agenda or the green future that we desire, or what you can call the future of humanity. As you know, in Africa, as most of the countries in sub-Sahara are still developing countries, some are in really call them low-income areas, low-income countries, waste management has really remained an issue of great concern. And when you talk about waste management, waste generally is a matter of necessity, and every human being must generate waste, but we have to be ethically prepared so that we can manage the waste that we produce. The waste generation is a development subject. The more country develops, the more waste it generates, and the waste come from different sources, from our domestic areas, markets, institutions such as health, educational institutions, from industries, and also from commercial places like supermarkets. And this waste, of course, the quantity varies and the nature of this waste varies. So in this particular presentation, I will share with you this waste issue from Africa waste crisis perspective, and then environmental exposure pathways, and then issue of health concerns associated with the poor or inadequate waste management in relation to infections and the vector-borne diseases, issue related to occupational health impact of the waste, and then policy failures and circular economy solution, and what is the way out of this problem. As you know, for example, in Africa, according to the various sources, they indicate that but by the way, let me give what we can call a statement that what I am presenting is basically municipal solid waste management, and it is not any other waste. So electronic waste is not included, and health waste is not included, but we are talking about pure municipal solid waste. And so here, some studies have indicated that in Africa, we generate by end of this year, almost 250 million tons of waste. And sub-Saharan alone, this is expected to reach above 269 metric tons. And if you compare that to 2015, 10 years ago, it has sort of, the waste was 174 million metric tons. And now it has almost doubled in less than 10 years. It has almost doubled to almost by nearly 100%. And in sub-Saharan Africa, average waste collection rates, whatever that is collected from the source, is between 45 to 55% only. That means the rest of the waste end up in rivers, in wetlands, in open spaces, in private land, and also on the roads and in many other places which are not designated waste disposal site. So this is where the problem is. That means there is inadequate waste collection, and there's inadequate waste storage, and also there is inadequate waste transportation. That is why the percentage is very low. And then again, there is also inadequate waste management infrastructure, such as recycling facilities or material recovery facilities or transfer stations, which are not yet in place in Africa. So because of these inadequacies, the West find it is places in a non-designated areas. Nearly a half of all the West ends up in the streets, as I said, field, football field, or in water bodies, and this is according to the latest UNEP and World Bank reports. Now, if we look at, as I said, waste is a necessity and we cannot ignore. So global waste management actually is estimated to cost 367 billion shillings. That is the cost of global waste mismanagement cost. And this cost can be in the area of what is called unrecovered resources. It can be time that is lost to collect this waste, which could have been used in productivity. And it could be financial resources required to now correct the what we can call uncollected waste, which is already causing environmental burdens. So these environmental externalities, these are costs that is required to clean up what we can call the sub-Saharan Africa waste problem. And this is expected to grow. The $367 billion was in 2020, and in 2050, this cost is expected to escalate to 640 billion. And you can see how the burden of waste, or the economic burden of waste, is really going to remain a nightmare for many African countries. Research studies have indicated that poor waste handling actually is what fuels outbreak of cholera, typhoid, and other non-communicable diseases. Because if you just look at the waste, and then this waste receive water, it degrades, and then it contaminates the water sources, which is used where this same water is used in informal sector. It causes a lot of outbreak, and that is why many cities in sub-Saharan Africa, including Nairobi, among others, are always having presence of pockets of cholera. And then again, remember the waste that is having wetlands, or the what you can call the leachate from the west, which actually flows like stream. They act as a breeding ground for mosquitoes, which is another epidemic facing the sub-Saharan Africa. So yet these resources, what we can call these uncollected, unutilized waste resources, if we can really do what is called the 7 or the 5R of reuse, recovery, and recycling, it can yield a lot of money to the extent of $7 or $8 billion per year in a net gain. But now it represents what we can call a lost resources to many African countries. And then if you look at the health of the waste scavengers that is shown in the picture, you can imagine a lot of waste being burned in these dump sites. And then this waste again has a lot of sharps, some because there is mishandling of the healthcare waste, and therefore there is a risk of physical injury. There is a risk of what you can call the waste burning, which can lead to release of the sulfur oxide, sulfur X oxide, and nitrogen oxide, which can be very dangerous to human health. Now, let's look at now environmental pathways of exposure. Number one, in many countries in Africa, there is still a lot of informal burning of waste. Waste that is dumped on the road are normally banned. Waste that is put in illegal dump site are normally banned. The waste that is also dumped on official dump site are also banned by both the authority and also the scavengers who are there. So during the burning of waste, toxic emissions are produced, and these will contribute to particulate matter and volatile organic compounds, which are threats to the human health, basically. And then, if you look at the cows in these on these dump sites, remember these cows are consuming some form of plastics, which will going to have what we call the health impact on people in Africa, where, for example, the impact can be in form of what we can call the microplastics, which can be associated with hormonal disruptions or endocrine system disruptions. And all this is courtesy of what you can call toxic emissions that originate from burning of waste. Again, as I said, in such a dump sites, when the rains occur, the organic waste will now be dissolved. And remember, some of these dump sites, you'll find both inorganic and organic material, and some of them, they undergo decomposition. And when they undergo decomposition or degradation, then the leachates from the waste will because it is not treated in Africa, is not collected in Africa, is not analyzed in Africa, these leachates will become a threat to both the surface water, depending on the gradient of the soil and also depending on the nature of the soil. And then it is also a threat to underground water resource contamination. Then, of course, many dump sites in Africa receive electronic waste, and these electronic waste, some of them are associated with heavy metals and persistent organic pollutants, which has a chance to bioaccumulate when it comes into contact with the crops or when it comes into contact with the fatty issue, be it an animal or be it a human being or so. So there is a threat of bioaccumulation of heavy metals, both in the soil, because remember, from my experience, when I visited some dump site in the Western Kenya, for example, there is a lot of farming that is being done at the periphery of the dump sites, and there is a risk of the crops being contaminated by heavy metals associated with dumps. Now, another important thing, this particular picture, which shows the Black Lagoon, was taken in Ghana, and it shows the impact of chemical pollution. And this particular incident, ladies and gentlemen, is reminding me of two global classical cases. One in Japan, where we have a case of Minamata Bay, where a factory was built in a gulf, and they were disposing their chemical waste. This is very many years ago, and it's no longer functioning. But I'm just giving in because of it is an example of environmental crisis in the world. So in Minamata Bay, this chemical factory was dumping its wastewater, which is contaminated with the chemicals, in the Gulf, and the community there were fishing from there to get their protein and livelihood. And the fish they were getting is all contaminated with the mercury. And the mercury, they actually had a lot of health impact on the local community, where the company was sued and they were subjected to a lot of legal liabilities, a lot of compensations, and it was finally closed. And then that started a journey that led to Mercury Convention in the world. That is one good example. Then another one is what is called the Love Canal in US, where a former dump site, for example, was rehabilitated and where different soil were used, and after rehabilitation, after many years, the land was used to build schools. And then after a while, it was discovered that chemicals were seeping through the walls, and it affected or it impacted the health of the school children. And also that led to a crisis in America some years back. But I think some of this problem has already been resolved. And there are many cases where what we can call hazardous waste has led to global crisis. But for example, particularly moving hazardous waste from one region to another. And allow me to give you a good example. In northern Kenya, it was said to be in late 80s and early 90s that there were some foreign companies that were assessing ASAL and arid and semi-arid lands in northern Kenya, particularly the Marsabit County and Wajir County, where they assumed that they have buried some hazardous waste, where the pastoralists said, since some buried things were done in our area, the trees have dried and the people have developed a lot of skin irritations. Even some of them complain of emergencies of the skin cancers and death of many animals. Now, the toxic profile, for example, this is just some of the typical chemical, heavy metals or chemicals that are harmful to human beings that can be found in a dump site. Of course, lead have been found in these concentrations. I think I'll provide the paper. Maybe you can read the detail and the references later. But there are evidences where some dump sites in Africa are associated with lead contamination, which has got neurological damage and leading to also anemia among the children. We have polyhydrocarbons also, which has been found in the range of 0.2 to 5.3 milligram per kg, which is associated with the cancer risk and endocrine system disruptions. And then we have got PBDs, which are in the range of 127 to 3,702 parts per gram per liter, which is associated with neurotoxicity and chronic diseases. We also have got particulate matter and the volatile organic carbons, which has indicated in our dump site that the level is extremely higher than what is recommended in the World Bank, in the World Health Organization limits. And that is why you find a lot of respiratory issues associated with asthma and COPD, and then cardiovascular disease risk. And these diseases are currently emerging in areas where there is a poor waste management problem in Africa. Again, the waste and the wash, where we can link now the waste, water, sanitation, and hygiene issues, unsafe wash services where people are not able to access clean water, clean sanitational facilities, and then where waste is poorly managed. It is said to have resulted to more than 1 million deaths in sub-Saharan Africa, according to the research in 2019. And this means that there is what you can call the lost years, the productivity years that is lost in Africa because of this death can be associated with almost 55 million people who will now be unproductive to both to the African productivity and progress. Then we also have got, of course, whenever it rains in many countries in Africa, particularly in East Africa, there are challenges where the wastewater burst because all the channels, all the canals have been blocked by plastics, containers, plastic material, and forcing the wastewater to burst and then flow on the road. And when now these fecal material dry up on the road, and then the road being not well maintained, all those fecal material will now go to dust, and then it will create a lot of respiratory diseases in many African countries. And a good example, when, for example, when wastewater system is clogged and then it bursts, sometimes there's a tendency that the wastewater and the potable water get mixed, and that has led to outbreak of viral diseases, which is reported to be at 69% causing diarrhea-related death from cholera, diarrhea, typhoid, among others. Then we have got, as I have said, in Africa, of course, malaria is an epidemic that has been with us, and it has caused a lot of death. But one of the breeding areas is, of course, dump sites that is designated, and many illegal undesignated dump sites which receive waste, and then which is always associated with stagnant water. So waste create breeding site for malaria and dengue fever, and malaria has always remained a threat to the pregnant women and under 5 children, and also people who live in what you call in slums or informal settlements. Because some of the informal settlements, particularly in Nairobi eastern side, they are always suffering because of the floods, the flash floods that come with the Nairobi River. It has led to a lot of flooding. And then when a lot of these floods happens, and then of course the potable water is polluted, and there is a lot of pathogens, which creates a lot of health crisis for many informal settlements in Africa. Then the other thing is, of course, as you are aware, since climate risk is increasing, because if climate risk in a form of what we can call high temperature, which comes with a lot of heat stress, and when there is inadequate water, then of course that creates hygiene problems and subsequently health crisis. Again, when there's a lot of water, many of the uncollected waste will going to be flooded, and it will also have got a lot of health consequences. So solid waste management has a direct impact in relation to climate change impact, and therefore there is a need to make waste management infrastructure in Africa climate resilient, climate smart, and also be made to be what we can call resilient to either too much flooding, or what we can call that they will not be degrading as a result of increased precipitations or temperature. Because when the temperature is high, for example, when the temperature is high, and then there are some fires in the dump sites, then of course that has a tendency to increase climate change impact because of increased carbon dioxide, which will be released in the atmosphere. Now, chronic health impact associated with what we can call poor waste management in Africa, particularly the dump site. As I said, in a lot of, for example, electronic batteries, a lot of electronic phones, what you can call machines that are used at home, end up in dump sites. And that one so there are always a number of heavy metals like lead and cadmium, and the PCBs, which is of course a threat to human health. And then remember, there are people, there are scavengers or recyclers who are on daily basis collecting these waste, transporting these waste, storing these waste, and also transporting them and dumping them at the dump site. And then there are guys who are there trying to recover each and everything that they think is useful, that is through scavenging activity. Then, of course, I have already mentioned this issue of the respiratory problems, which comes as a result of e-waste, particularly the people who collect electronic waste, those who want to recover. By the way, mining today has an opportunity where it can act as mining for the rare earth metals. I know when I was in Denmark were recovering a lot of precious metals from their dump sites, and then And then that was a very innovative way to recover some of the materials. Now again, so the scavengers are at risk because of consuming gases from the burning of waste, and many children who are scavenging this material are suffering there. Then again, the people, there are settlements near dump sites where the contamination, what we can call volatile elements, like lead, which might have changed its form, or which has entered the water sources, they have been found to have been present in the blood of children under 5 in families that live close to dump sites, and then some poultry, some eggs, some chickens that are also being that are found area to the dump site is said to have the presence of heavy metals in their egg, and then the children in their blood, they were able to detect the presence of lead poisoning. And in Kenya, we have got a very classical case of a history which you might need to check online, where one of the leading manufacturing companies, which I don't want to mention, was said to have contaminated a village at the coast, where the case was in court for many years, but later it was ruled against the company, and they were forced to compensate billions of shillings to the communities that are suffered because of these heavy metals that is associated with the company's operations through a poor disposal of waste. So children who live close to dump site have neurological issues because of exposure. Many pregnant mothers have suffered stillbirth, and then there are others who are the children again who are in these types of contaminated environment are said to have a learning deficits of the slow learning because the systems is already ruptured. And then again, of course, one of the other challenges that we face in Africa is in terms of healthcare waste, which is mixed with some household waste because of corruption, because of inadequate enforcement and compliance, and that end up also injuring people who work with the waste at the dump sites. So that is healthcare waste. That is the problem of waste segregation or separation, where healthcare waste is mixed with household waste or municipal waste, and then you'll find some needles, some sharps, some containers being found in the dump site. And then equally the same, for example, because of poverty, there are many in this country, for example, in our country, I know like any other countries in sub-Saharan Africa, there is a lot of entrance of the pesticides that comes to the country, and then where people use these chemicals for agriculture, but then there's inadequate collection of the pesticide or chemical containers, and now you'll find them being used at household level, and there's a risk of contamination of poor children, poor women who are using these particular containers that are contaminated with chemicals or pesticides, because they can collect these from dump sites. Then another issue is the issue of air pollution and non-communicable diseases. The urban sub-Saharan Africa prevalence of asthma is 10 to 15%. And then there are issues of hypertension between, again, 15 to 20%. Waste burning is all blamed for this prevalence of respiratory diseases or that is found in sub-Saharan Africa. So currently efforts are being made to install what we can call air quality monitoring in many of these cities so that they can be able to create policy awareness and enforcement. I think I just want to, maybe I will make this statement later, that global air quality report was released the day before yesterday, and there's a lot that is being linked with waste management, or what you can call inadequate waste management. So integrating air quality monitoring with waste control reduces what you can call non-communicable disease burden in Africa. Again, we have got occupational and social vulnerability of many African waste workers or people who work in informal sectors. Informal waste sector, which is an economic lifeline for many people, face high health risk associated with waste management. There are challenges of injuries, infections, respiratory diseases, mental stress, what we can call it, they're being undermined, and then they are being looked on in Africa. People who worked in West, they are not being, they are said to be like an outcast. So there is that cultural problems that is also found. And of course, that lead to mental stress for many West workers in Africa. Then we also have got children and women who are most affected by household air pollution. And this can be from the this one of the health and women. This is to do with people who live close to dumpsters, as I said, and then but sometimes it is also to deal with their for the type of energy they access, maybe the fuel, not fuel wood, which they use for cooking, but also some firewood. And then we also have got children respiratory infection, which is said to be increasing. Then before I think I'm almost moving towards the end, is why this crisis in Africa, for example? Why this crisis in Africa? Today we had a meeting where we were meeting with the city county government, and one of the pillars we are trying to discuss with them is how to improve waste management in public places such as roads and walking corridors. So areas that requires a lot of strengthening is to do with weak enforcement of the waste laws. I know in Kenya, for example, my mother country, and may God protect for us. They have the best policies, but the challenge is always capacity in terms of financial capacity, technological capacity, the research capacity, a limited infrastructure. That is where the challenge is. And there are a lot of competent scholars that are always being churned out by universities, but not all of them get a chance to really provide the services that is required. That means there's a very big disconnect between the policy and practice and communities. And then, of course, other challenges include lack of data on waste generation and compositional studies so that we can know the type of waste that is emerging during this time of artificial intelligence, because AI has increased the number of electronic waste or technological uptake, and the more technology is being uptaken by community, is the more waste of electronic waste is now coming into contact with our land and also with the people. And that particular waste is of a concern. A good example of this, if I want to give, is, as you know, for the last 20 years, there is a global rush for what is called solarization of the world, particularly in Africa. So there are a lot of solar panels that has come to Africa. But maybe, let me just say, after 20 or 30 years, most of these solar panels, which is associated with what you can call hazardous material, will going to become obsolete. So as Africa, they are yet to embrace the best way to really deal with hazardous solid waste management that will come from many artificial intelligence equipment and also solar panels, among others. And also, I must say that it is only recent, 3 or 2 years ago, that the government of Kenya has given a policy directive directing the removal and safe disposal of asbestos from public and private institutions that has them. And I must acknowledge and appreciate the effort by National Environmental Management Authority of Kenya, where they have come up with asbestos removal and disposal guideline. But what we don't have yet is what you can call an industry-based technology, which can help in what we can call in reducing the hazardousness of asbestos, and which can enable asbestos to be reused once it has been converted into a safe material. So as a country, we have got a challenge of asbestos removal and disposal at the moment. So I think because of our latest laws that was put in place in 2022 by the government, that is integrated waste management, we have opportunity now to address some of these historical gaps in order to protect the people and the nature. Okay, I hope I'll summarize in the next, hopefully, for 10 minutes, Chair. Then let me just briefly come to the circular economy and sustainable solutions. I think as a country, for example, in Kenya, I'll be giving quite a number of examples from my country. The issue of circular economy is gaining momentum. The issue of the the issue of reuse, reduce, and recycling is gaining momentum. Currently, there are areas where all the many SME companies in Kenya, for example, that used to collect and take the waste to Dandora dump site is now establishing their own MRF, material recovery facility, where they are increasing the recovery of the material for regeneration. I think if you look at 3 or 5 years ago, the recycling rate in Kenya was less than 10%, but as we speak today, it is more than, it should be between 20 to 30% recovery. And really, this is rapidly happening, creating a lot of market demand, a lot of jobs, and then a lot of the technologies that is being brought in to take care of these particular different fractions of waste. As you are aware, for example, another good example I wanted to give from Africa is that in Ethiopia, for example, all the break pads waste are being collected. No, waste from abattoir, because Ethiopia has got large livestock population. They are using some of the waste material to make brake pads, and that is saving the space on the land. Then in Burkina Faso, for example, there's a lot of plastic paving blocks. And in Kenya too, I think I must say that in Kenya, for example, we have got a lot of plastic poles. We have got a lot of concrete poles. We also have got a lot of what you can call the flower pots that are made from the waste material. We have got a lot of art and craft material made from the waste recycled. And we also have got a lot of tires which have been really been converted into fence, and then also construction of houses, and then also for as a decorative of some of the public picnic sites. So there are a lot of good things that is happening as far as what we can call circular economy is concerned. So in Kenya, for example, where I can confidently say that more than 90% of the papers are being recycled, more than 70% of the plastics are being recycled. Glass, nearly more than 90% are being recycled at Kitengela Glass, and also through Central Glass industry. So there's a lot of good stories that we can tell maybe next year, so that we can talk of more practical cases. So any policy to deal with waste management in Africa must focus on what you can call accelerating waste recovery, and then of course worker protections. I think those are the most important thing that I wanted to mention. So final thoughts, I want to say that Africa is suffering because of waste mismanagement, and that is associated with a public health emergency. Because when there is a cholera outbreak, that is a public health emergency, and a lot of resources are diverted to attend to that. Then again, there is a need to embrace integrated system so as to support circular economy, which has a potential to reduce disease burdens, because we make sure that even if floods occur, there is no dump site, because all the waste are being utilized, and there's no waste going to the river. I want you to imagine with me where you close your eyes, where the waste stream is like a river in front of us. If we remove all the papers, we remove all the plastics, we remove all the organics and take them to biogasification plants, and then we take all the textile and utilize them. We remove all the woods from there. So it's like the river going to the land as a dump site will keep reducing in size until there will be no more waste that will reach our land. So government in Africa must treat waste as a core health infrastructure, and this must be realized under the One Health system in African vision. A cleaner Africa is a healthier, more peaceful Africa, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much indeed, Ali, for this wonderful presentation. And you've talked about many important issues that many of us can relate to, the environmental crisis, of course, the poor waste management, and air pollution, and non-communicable diseases, but occupational social vulnerability, but also governance and policy gaps. And yes, when I move around here, also just there are dump sites left, right, and center, and that's really worrying, really. And so I would like now to welcome participants and people on this call for questions, comments, and sharing of experiences. Whoever wants to begin, please, you are more than welcome. Yeah, Janet, please go for it.
Okay. As well, I wait for the African, more centrally affected people to ask a question. I'll just raise this. What a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much, Dr. Adan. And I'm thinking, of course, to what extent do you see this as modern problems, new kinds of problems? And to what extent in Africa are traditional ways possible to deal with some of these things? Or is that not so relevant because of increased plastics pollution, air pollution, knowing so much more about the chemicals that are causing diseases, chemicals and bacteria, etc. So to what extent is this a modern problem, a contemporary problem, and to what extent are there any traditional methods that are used that are helpful? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Chair, will I respond or we go?
Yes, you may respond to that, and then we'll go to Odoch and Eliseo.
Okay, thank you so much, my sister Janet. This is a modern problem. Modern problem, we can only use modern approach, first and foremost, which is technology, which is policy and enforcement, and then using our culture, our religious values to teach people to change their behavior so that waste can be reduced. And then we have to use incentives, what we can call policy or economic incentives, to encourage companies to invest in what we can call a biodegradable, environmental friendly technologies. These are the ways in which we can be able to reduce this modern waste problem. But then African culture has got a lot of potential to deal with the waste, and also religious values and virtues has a lot of potential to really handle the problem of the waste, but we have really not explored. I'm sure you always teach your children the do's and don'ts, that waste is not allowed. For example, if, for example, we just take a food waste, for example, in my culture, throwing food is not allowed in Islam. I am a Muslim. And then, for example, this food that you want to throw away, if you can only cook what you need and you can easily finish, or what you learn to cook and share with your neighbors or with the poor people who are on the street, then there will be no problem of organic waste, or particularly organic or food waste, which can be found in the society. And then the other thing is our culture, we always have that we have to take care of our neighbors under even the 10 commandments, where you treat your neighbors well. I know, Dr. George, you are talking from St. Augustine University, which is a very religious institution. So if we can use those values to take care that our waste should not become a problem to our neighbors, to people who use the road, or then it will be able to create a lot of consciousness. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this fantastic response. Thank you. Yes, it stretches beyond your exact what you presented, and I really appreciate that. Thank you. Next question. I mute myself.
Thank you so much. And Odoch? Please unmute your microphone, Odoch.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I have a question on the chat.
Oh, could you read it for us, please,
Yes.
Odoch?
Yes. But before I do, can you allow me to respond to what Janet asked just a short while ago?
Certainly.
I hope Dr. will not mind if I added to his answer.
It's okay.
I think this problem is largely modern. Modern on account of urbanization, increased population, and abuse of technology, where technology includes materials. That would be what I could contribute to in terms of the question that was asked. So here is now my question. My question is on the impact of Kenya policy on shopping bags. Yeah, as you may remember, Kenya introduced biodegradable shopping bags, and supermarkets stopped one-use shopping bags. What is the impact of this policy on pollution of the environment? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Ali?
Yes, thank you so much, Odoch. I want to get this Professor Pido.
Yes.
Yes, retired.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say hi to you, and I'm very glad and proud that you join us. And this question you ask is very true, that in Kenya, Kenya was inspired by the Rwandan policy, where they banned plastics in their country. So because we were suffering because of single-use plastics, where you buy an item, it is wrapped in a single-use plastics, you come home and you throw it away. And in our country, it became the country of the black flowers. Everywhere, every tree, every side of the road, you'll find black single-use plastics. That was everywhere. That was the challenge that we had. When the government came with a policy that banned single-use plastics, the following were the effect that happened. Number one, the companies upgraded their technology and they came up with a thick plastic bag, which you can now purchase using your money from the supermarket, from the supermarkets. So initially the single-use plastics was being given free, but now for you to access the shopping bags, you have to part with 30 shillings or 50 shillings, so that, and then because now you bought, you will be forced to reuse, as you keep them safely and then you reuse as many times as possible. That is one impact. And then there is a lot of technological improvement where we came up with a somehow not maybe 100%, but somehow a biodegradable steel material, but people are still buying this. Then another thing is, another impact is people have now went back to the, what we can call the cardboard, the paper package that used to be there in early 70s or 80s, which I am. So that one now have come back, and is, you will find it in all chemists and in many restaurants, because the plastics is no longer available. I think awareness that the plastics are also never good for food packaging has led to another window of innovation where restaurants are now adapting a biodegradable paper-based packaging of the fast food. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ali. Eliseo, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. George.
Afternoon.
Good
How are things?
afternoon
Nice to see you
Good
after
afternoon to
such
you
a long time.
Sure. Thank you. It's nice for me also to be here today. Thank you very much. And good afternoon to you all. Good afternoon to the presenter. I have enjoyed very much this presentation. And I think without it, it couldn't have made a meaning to be sustainable development, because indeed this is about sustainable development, and we can't talk about sustainable development without talking about waste management. I don't have a question as such, but I think my comment may raise some concern which may need is Peter, the presenter is Peter? Ali, it's Ali to answer. Yes, okay. I have loved very much your presentation, and thank you very much and congratulations for it. My comment is this. We are saying that our continent is poor, but we have to produce a lot of, we are poor, but we have to produce a lot of waste. We have no capacity to manage our waste. We have to produce, let me say it again. We're a poor continent, which doesn't actually even produce enough food. We don't have a lot of money to buy food, but we have the capacity to produce waste. We don't have the capacity to manage our own waste. And there goes the cycle. No food, a lot of pollution, a lot of diseases, not enough money to buy food or to pay for health care. So is this a correct perception that it's a kind of problem of education and mixed up with management and knowledge management? I don't know, maybe you have to explain there. And also you talked about sometime when finishing, you talked about asbestos. And as I am close to cover my house, that raised a concern for me. I would like to ask if covering a house with aluminum coverage or covering a house with asbestos, which could be a better way of contributing to sustainability? Thank you.
Okay, I proceed.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Elisu. Let me make the following corrections. As an African scholar, I don't believe Africa is a poor continent full of poor people. As an African scholar, I am not subscribing or I don't belong to the school of thought that says that in Africa we produce little and we have challenge of food. Those are precautionary statements. When I say that in Africa we produce a lot of waste, one point that should be very clear in our mind is Africa is today a global market for the global corporations, for example, both in the West and in the East. So there is a lot of goods there's a lot of physical goods that come to Africa. And what is causing environmental pollution is not the goods that is 100% produced in Africa, although of course it has its own share, but it's purely is an industrial goods that come from, that is produced in Africa and that is also brought to Africa through trade and development. So, for example, this globalization, which made the world one village, is a reality and we cannot really run away from it. So, as Africa, if we mean it, if our leaders are servant leaders that are there to serve, then environmental problems can easily be managed because it has been done and it is easy to do it still. Issue of population is never a problem, according to my mind. Indeed, population is an asset, is a capital that can easily be put to use. But when, for example, the system failed to realize the potentials, the assets, the value that is in population, then of course the problems of environment come in, the problem of health will come in, the problem of food will come in, the problem of conflict will come in, problem of unhealthy competition will come in, and all sorts of problems will be present. Now, in terms of asbestos and aluminium, I think I want to say that, of course, both being the roofing material, I want to say that in a recent article that I read, there is a technology, there is a paper that was published in Italy that was able to explain how through high heat, you can be able to make the what's called the hazard that is in asbestos reduced to zero, and therefore then it becomes a reusable material. But it's still a technology that is being under review and it has not yet been well developed. But so as a result, we might still support a metallic roof. And then, so my opinion is metallic, ordinary iron sheet that has undergone a lot of technological improvement in terms of human health and safety will remain superior to any asbestos material, and covering it with aluminum or any other material, whether biological or non-biological, may not be the solution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Evelyn. Thank you so much for waiting. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated this
very tangible link between what we do and what we create. So thank you for the reminders. I have 3 questions, but also I thought I would just share a small anecdote from Sri Lanka, since you mentioned the golden rule, and that is where one neighbor was dumping her kitchen waste in the garden of the other neighbor. And despite several requests, she repeated it. So the offended neighbor went to the market and bought a banana tree and planted the tree on the garbage pile from her neighbor. And when she got her first bananas, she divided them in half and took half to her neighbor. Her neighbor asked why she was giving her bananas, and she said, "Thank you. Without your waste, I could never have produced these beautiful bananas." The two of them, the neighbor cried, and the two of them are now working together in communities as peace advocates to demonstrate that there are different ways of managing conflict. But my 3 questions are, I'm confused between the biodegradable bags and the information we get that they create microplastics that are in fact harmful, and whether that's an urban myth. So that's my first question. The second question is, I'm sure that there were very complex negotiations between the government and private sector around the banning of plastic bags. So I'd be really interested in that negotiation, if there was one. And the third one is, given your very articulate presentation, I wondered if at some point, or if you already have, making the link between what you have just presented and positive peace, i.e. the link between the environmental process that you're talking about and its direct implications for peace building. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Evelyn. The first question is kept in my mind. Thank you. Kindly repeat.
Oh, sorry. The first question is, we have been using biodegradable bags. I'm from Canada, and I'm talking in Canada. But we've also been given the message, or seen the message, that the biodegradable bags may in fact create microplastics. And is that true, or is that an urban myth? So I can feel free to use the biodegradable bags.
Oh, thank you so much. I think today I am the learner, and you are all my scholars or teachers. The examples you are giving is very, very great, I must say. Now, in terms of biodegradable bags that is associated with microplastics, I must admit that I need to read more on this to confirm if biodegradable bags has any presence of plastics. But a lot of microplastics that are being associated with the drinking water, that are being associated with the food, with the seeds or harvest crops, that is being associated with the fish in the sea, has really been of great concern. It has been of great concern. And I remember I have read around 2 to 3 articles on the impact of microplastics. And it is what is informing. It is just, there is a fear associated with these microplastics. And one of the development that is happening in Kenya, although we have not succeeded because of the political interest, is there is for the last 10 or so, 10, 20 years, there is mushrooming of water bottling by every Tom and Dick in my country, in every corner, and they are using plastic bottles. So currently, because of this awareness and health concern associated with microplastics in water, in drinking water, there is a move to ban plastic water bottling and then pushing people to go into glass, just like those old drinks of Coca-Cola that you see in glass. So, but because of the political interest, the process is very slow. The process is very slow, but I can remember there are 2 to 3 companies that have already embraced glass water bottling like Aquamist and Mayors. And I think Dasani could be on its way. But now all the UN meetings in Nairobi and high-end hotels, they are using glass bottled water. So this is one of the cases that I wanted to give you. So issue of the biodegradable bags, maybe I could read, and in our next meeting, I could inform you if there is any progress on that issue. Then the issue of the complex negotiation that is going on between the government in terms of plastic convention, I think the debate is getting hotter, and we look forward that to see how it will progress in the COP30 and the other conventions that is coming up after it. So thank you so much. I think the rest are comments, and I am planned.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ali. Donna, you're welcome.
Can you hear me? You can't hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes,
We can.
I'm
Please
here.
proceed.
Yes, I'm right here. It's still my
Yes, you are.
computer audio that's not working. So now I'm sitting down at Dodge's laptop. I want to call
All right.
to our total attention that that in my lifetime there has been an evolution of solid waste generation and waste disposal or solutions to waste management. Back in the 1940s, and I may be the only person here who remembers the 1940s, when there were no supermarkets. They were a new thing in the late 1940s, and everything that we purchased was packed in brown paper bags or wrapped in white paper that we called butcher paper. In the early 1950s, the first plastic bags showed themselves, and nobody cared whether they were biodegradable or not because they were such a new thing and a convenience because they're waterproof. When I arrived in East Africa in 1967, for the first 2 years that I was here, Uchumi, which was it was the first supermarket that I know of in Kenya. Uchumi did not give out any kind of containment for purchases. You had to bring a cloth bag or bring something to wrap your bread and milk and all that stuff in. I think that the general response to waste disposal in Kenya has not been very adequate, and I'm being critical of the government and also individuals, because when the idea of recycling came in, and it wasn't, by the way, it wasn't until 1969 or so that supermarkets would, at first in 68, 69, if you asked for something to put your purchases in, they would look at you like you were crazy. And Wazulu.
Have we lost Donna?
Somehow.
If you want to
Okay,
stop
please
me,
proceed,
that's
Donna.
okay.
Go ahead, Donna, please.
No, I want to quit. I think I've said enough. Some people may think that I've said too much. I
No,
think
there was
that we
there was
need to be
a
paying more attention to recycling waste material. Goodbye, everybody.
thank you so much, Donna, for that useful experience that you've shared with us. And Ali, maybe before you respond to that, Richard, you're welcome to ask a question or make your comment.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir George. Issue with waste is something that we need to be a bit careful about, because already Please, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Am I audible? Yes. Already, let's see, we were not able to define waste within our homes, our schools, and within our communities properly. So it has meant that there is a stigma associated to waste, things with waste. I believe one, it's we should try and then make people aware that waste is from our own self. If you drank water, pure water from sachet, through your mouth on the floor, it's not a waste at all. You can pick it. You can place it somewhere that looks a bit proper. And then one, lack of training of waste management at the basic level looks something that is troubling. Formerly, I believe when I was attending school, elementary school, I believe every session need to work on a plot for a month. Now this time, let's see if it's not like that. Second cycle, it's not like that. Tertiary, nothing like that. So the waste in itself is something that we've discarded. It's management. What is it? Practically included in courses in schools. That is what I'm asking at the moment, so that we bring back how we're dealing with waste previously, those days. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard. Aldi, any response to the two speakers?
First and foremost, let me say thank you to Professor Pido for reminding us the past history of waste management practice. We are very grateful for that piece of knowledge. To Richard, I am for the opinion that issue of waste is part of us, as you correctly said, but there is no stigmatization of waste risk. There is no stigmatization. Waste is a science, that is a true science that is physically before our eyes, present in our environments, and we can see the impact in our air, we can see the impact in our water or in our soil, and therefore is an issue that requires all of us to put our head together. But as a Muslim and as a scientist, let me say this, that in the revealed scriptures, including the Bible and the Quran, we have already been told that human action will go into harm environment. And I could see my brother Hafiz being in the forum. So, and what I believe is if we put our head correctly and we have got the right tools and the right knowledge, and we have got that determination, problem of waste can easily be solved. Let me give an example. In China, you know, China has become the world production hub for all types of goods in the world. And China has big population, as you know, but waste management is not a problem. Just because it is the government has made a deliberate decision. I was watching a clip where Chinese, to solve the problem of waste, they have invested in waste to energy facilities, or in waste to energy, converting waste into energy, using the energy to run industries or their systems. And as we speak, all those waste to energy facilities are becoming idle because there is no waste to feed them. So, but somebody can say, oh, incineration is associated with a lot of air issues. No, they are is waste to energy facilities that are environmental friendly, which is available today. So what I mean is God Almighty has blessed man with the knowledge, with ability to solve all the problems. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Hafiz, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. George, and thank Dr. Ali for the presentation. I just want to add a little to the waste management that you have been presenting, you have been talking about since. A friend of mine in 2001 had a proposal and presented to Lagos State government about how to use anything plastic or just as Richard mentioned about sack water. The nylon is being found in the ocean and the sea in Lagos State. So this man come with an idea that we can use cassava to do any form of plastic thing, so that in a 2 or 3 days when the sun shine on it, it will just decay. Or animal can use it as well as a food, as a way of trying to recycle the composition of life, the life cycle. But so unfortunately, by 2006-07, the man passed away. And I just have only the clue of the idea. I don't actually have the proposal with me. So this is a good idea that every government can try to enforce on. And on the other hand, in 2009, because of the, Dr. Ali said something about the biblical and the Quranic induction. There is two things that used to be moving me about the Quranic induction. The Quran said, "La tufsidu fil ardi," do not destroy the land. That is not what Dr. Ali read of Surah Al-Rum. So arali fasad filibari walibari biman kasabati ID nas. So the discussion of the land or the discussion of human being has spread over the world, both on the land and in the sea, because of their action. So these two things, if you can actually follow it up, and that 2009, I was able to write a proposal to, as a student union then, I was able to write a proposal and push it very, very hard, that if students were provided with baskets, that every corner, every case, every staircase, if you have a disposable basket there, then people will know. We don't have to tell them that make use of disposer before you can dispose whatever that you are eating properly. To the extent that I find it very difficult, if I'm on the way that I've used something like paper or something, I will put it in my pocket until when I get home to dispose it properly. Because if you actually have this consciousness, we don't need to be waiting for government to come into our aid, because it is not the government that these things are actually affect directly. It is we general people that these things affect. So if we can follow this individual ideology of the Bible and the Quran, we should be able to manage waste by ourselves very well, without any form of this, disturbance. Like what we are, the climatic threat that we have in Lagos now is that there will be a lot of flood. Not because of anything, it's because of mismanagement of waste. Because all the drainage that we have in Lagos is channeled to the ocean or the sea. So if it is not well cleaned, so this thing can come back, water blockage, we know what actually will happen and what is actually happening now. That the Lagos State has started to be going against anything plastic food. The plastic that they used to pack food, that they shouldn't put it, even the supermarket, that they shouldn't be giving out nylon. And if you have to give nylon, they should sell it to people so that people will know that the value of that nylon, they will not be able to waste it. So this is my contribution. Thank you so much for the enlightenment, Dr. Ali.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof, for that. Very good. I think let me make one remark. Number one, the best way to deal with environmental pollution is to use the nature-based solution. You cannot use artificial system to solve or to clean air or to clean the ocean. It is the nature-based solutions that will be the best option and that can guarantee sustainability. So that is why I love the story of cassava and the nylon. If you can just put that comment escape my mind in the chat, I will appreciate really. I know George is looking at his time. And then I think I want to say one thing, George, with the permission. In the Quran, there is a verse that God Almighty say, which I will recite in Arabic, and then I will also translate it into English, where God Almighty say, first of all, number one, according to Islamic perspective, God Almighty created the universe alone without anything else. Number two, after he created and perfected the creation, he created human being in the best form of creation. In the best form of creation means how high the human being is compared to other creations, whether jinn or angels, human being is more superior because of this special status which God Almighty has given. Number two, God Almighty granted human being what is called knowledge, which he has not granted to anyone. Then, and this is why when Adam was created, the first thing that Adam was given was not food, but it was knowledge. And then God Almighty said that very well. Number three, because of this knowledge, God Almighty gave Adam two obligations: to provide environmental stewardship for the universe and all that it contains in terms of utilizations of the natural resources that are there. And for man to be able to do this, God has given human being what we can call a capability, and this is where I'm coming to solve environmental problems. God Almighty say, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَّلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. Indeed, we, God Almighty uses the word we as a respect of singularity. To talk about His Majesty as a Lord. He said, we have indeed enabled, we have indeed blessed or put a lot of, Prof, how do you say, can you translate this? Professor Hafiz. Okay, let me try. God Almighty said, indeed we have honored son of Adam with the knowledge, knowledge which is associated with the technology, innovations, and enabled him to travel through the earth, to discover all the resources on earth, for a man to travel through the sea and all the resources associated with it in the blue economy resources. And all this is given because man is, he is the stewardship, he is the vicegerent of God Almighty. And my party short, George, is we need a very serious collaborative partnership to facilitate this dialogue between academia, industry, government, and communities. Thank you so much for giving me this great chance.
Thank you very much indeed for that wonderful presentation, for this wonderful summary also at the end. You leave us with thought for, food for thought. And definitely we are going to ask you once again to come and talk to us. And I thank everybody on this call for your cooperation and for your attention. And I'm looking forward to meeting you again next week. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you so much, everyone.
It's very